What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Politics with Steve. All right, y'all know the drill. Before we get started, I want to take a second and ask everybody to subscribe to my YouTube page, sign up for my email list. Those are the best ways to stay in the loop on all things Politics with Steve. Without further ado, let's get to it. No new wars. One of Trump's main campaign promises. We're not even a year into his first term in office, and he attacked at least three different countries, starting three new conflicts. Again, I'm not even including the things that the U.S. was actively engaged in when he took office. Well, we gonna just talk about these three: Venezuela, Nigeria, and Iran. Because yesterday, Trump announced the U.S. carried out drone strikes on a port facility in Venezuela. We know on Christmas, the U.S. military released videos of attacks they say were against ISIS in Nigeria. And finally, a couple days ago, the president of Iran said that his country is in an all out war against the United States. So, what the fuck is happening? Well, let's start with Venezuela. Now, this has been like a slow build up, right? We discussed in prior videos the US strikes on vessels they say were carrying drugs to the US. But like after that famous double tap strike, the commander that was in charge of that strike testified to Congress that that boat wasn't even traveling to the United States. But regardless, that was in international waters. The attack Trump told us about yesterday, that was on Venezuelan soil. So that's different. Now, make no mistake, this is about oil. People know that the US produces a lot of oil, but it is sweet crude oil. And we got a need for sour crude oil because that's what most US refineries are meant to handle, right? Like that's what they was built for. And it's just obvious that the story don't add up because if you look at the map, most drugs that's carried to the United States don't even come from the shores or like the waters directly around Venezuela. It comes from the Eastern Pacific. So again, Trump claims these attacks hit a port facility. We now know that this attack was carried out by the CIA. Now, that's important because had it been a US military, Congress would have had to be involved because of the war powers law. Only Congress can declare war in the United States. But instead, this was done by the CIA. I mean, it makes it easier to be classified as like sort of covert operations, which is what the CIA specialized in. That has much less oversight than actual military operations. So that's why it was carried out by the CIA. Once again, this is just Trump's way of going around Congress. He basically achieved the same goal, but again, didn't have to get congressional approval. Now, one thing I want people to understand because people just toss around these terms like we going to war with Venezuela. The US is not going to put boots on the ground. We are not going to do a land invasion of Venezuela. Why? Because a land invasion of any country is extremely risky, especially one with the geographic complications that Venezuela got. Let me show y'all this map of Venezuela and we're going to talk about this. So, the northern border of Venezuela is mostly water. So, this will have to be an amphibious invasion where the US military is coming from the ocean. That will require them to take over a large port so that we can bring in all of these troops and equipment. They will have to push back enemy lines. And even if this is successful, it will result in a lot of lives lost. Another option for a ground invasion would be the US military to drop in paratroopers behind enemy lines. They will have to take over and hold an airport so that the US military can drop in reinforcements, bring in supplies and equipment and all of that, right? We just seen Russia fail at this in Ukraine. And they tried to take over an airport right outside of the capital of Kyiv. And if they would have done that, this war would have already been over by now. But they couldn't hold that airport. The last option for a land invasion is it being staged in another South American country. And it is highly unlikely that any of these countries let the United States stage a war against Venezuela in their country. Even if they did, I'm sure that the infrastructure in those countries wouldn't really allow the US military to carry all of this equipment and people through these roads and terrain. Again, the US is not gonna go to war with Venezuela because nobody in the United States will be happy with the number of casualties. So now let's talk Nigeria. Because on Christmas Day, we seen a video released by the US military that showed an attack inside of Nigeria. Trump said that this attack was to protect Christians. But here's the problem. He went after a region that Christians and Muslims coexisted in peacefully for a very long time. Trump also said that the attack was against the terrorist group ISIS. Again, the problem is people said that there was no ISIS in the villages that was struck. When Trump is out of office, we gonna need the next administration to see who these attacks was really against. Like, none of this is really making sense. By the way, in Nigeria, there are way many Muslims under attack than Christians. And now let's talk Iran, because this one is very unique. If we recall earlier this year, the US struck Iran's Fordo nuclear facility with those 30,000-pound bunker buster bombs. The facility was underground, so these bombs, these ordnance penetrators went underground and then they exploded. Well, Iran retaliated with like minor, I would call these mostly symbolic attacks on like US military bases. After that, the US and Iran's beef mostly went underground until just recently it was reports of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu traveling to the United States to meet with President Trump. Now, before he even arrived to the United States, the president of Iran declared an all out war against the US and Israel. A couple things to note. This is a new president because if we recall back, the last president died in like a plane crash. Well, maybe it was a helicopter crash. I don't remember, but it wasn't suspicious. It was over like a foggy region or something. But the point is, this is a new president. It's also important to note that the president of Iran is not necessarily important. Like, he's not the supreme leader. The Ayatollah is the only political person that inside of Iran that can start a new war. And he hasn't said anything. And of course, after Trump met with Benjamin Netanyahu, he started immediately issuing more threats to Iran, warning them not to try and rebuild their nuclear program. By the way, I agree with that. Like, we should all agree Iran should not have a nuclear weapon. My real issue is that Trump seemed to be acting without the guidance of the US intelligence community. For example, the US intelligence community clearly thought that the Iran nuclear program was much further off from attaining a nuclear weapon than what the Israel intelligence community thought. Benjamin Netanyahu met with Trump, and apparently he got Trump to agree with him, and he authorized those strikes. I don't really want the president of the United States to be acting on anybody else's intelligence unless he got a very good reason to be doing so. And I haven't seen that yet.